Nobody joins a cult. That is the first thing to understand. People join a community that finally gets them, a group where they feel seen for the first time, a leader who seems to have answers nobody else has bothered to find. The word cult gets applied later, usually from the outside, usually too late. From the inside at the beginning, it just feels like belonging. And belonging is the thing humans have always needed more than they needed to be right. Start with who actually joins, because the answer dismantles something most people believe about themselves. Cult researchers have spent decades trying to find the personality type that makes someone vulnerable. They have not found one. What they found instead is a set of circumstances. Life transitions, a move, a divorce, a death, a graduation, a period of genuine searching, make almost anyone more open to a group that offers direction and warmth. The studies on cult recruitment consistently find that the people most likely to be successfully recruited are not the uneducated, not the mentally unstable, not the socially broken. They are people in the middle of a transition who encountered the right group at the wrong moment. That description fits most people alive at some point in their life. The first stage researchers call love bombing. It has a clinical name because it has a clinical function. The new recruit is met with extraordinary warmth, invitations, attention, meals, conversations that go late into the night, the feeling that this group has been waiting specifically for them. NXIVM recruits described their first weekends as the most seen they had ever felt. Jonestown members in the early San Francisco years described Jim Jones as the only leader who actually put his beliefs into practice, feeding people, housing people, marching with civil rights leaders. The warmth at the beginning is not fake. That is the part that makes it effective. It is real warmth deployed with a specific purpose, which is a different thing entirely. Then the group becomes the primary relationship. Slowly. Gradually enough that the person inside doesn't notice the timeline. Outside, friendships become harder to maintain. The group's schedule fills the calendar. Outsiders are described as people who don't understand. Family members who raise concerns are framed as threats to the person's growth. This is not accidental. Researchers call it isolation, and it functions as a one-way valve. The group becomes the main source of social contact, which means it becomes the main source of identity, which means leaving stops being a choice about the group and starts being a choice about who you are. Here is the part that feels counterintuitive. People often stay not because they believe everything, but because they have already given too much. Time, money, relationships sacrificed, public declarations made. Psychologists call this sunk cost entrenchment. The more a person has invested, the more leaving feels like an admission that the investment was wrong, which means they were wrong, which means the years they gave were wasted. The math the group runs on is not belief. It is loss aversion. The same force that makes people hold a losing stock too long keeps people inside a high-control group years past the point where something felt wrong. And something almost always does feel wrong. Former members of nearly every documented cult describe a moment, sometimes early, sometimes after years, where something happened that didn't fit. A rule that seemed arbitrary. A punishment that seemed disproportionate. An explanation that required more trust than evidence. The group has a name for that feeling. They call it doubt, and they treat it as a spiritual problem rather than a reasonable response to a real observation. The person is taught to bring their doubt back to the group, which means the group becomes the tool for resolving questions about the group. That is a closed loop. You cannot think your way out of a system that has already defined thinking as the problem. The leader is the keystone of all of it. Not because leaders are uniquely charismatic, though some are, but because the leader's role in a high-control group is structural. They are positioned as the sole interpreter of reality. What is true is what the leader says is true. What the leader does is, by definition, what a person at their level of understanding is permitted to do. The rules apply differently at the top because the person at the top is beyond ordinary rules. That structure is not unique to cults. You can find versions of it in governments, in corporations, in families. The cult version is simply the one with no external checks at all. I want to be careful here about something. It is easy to watch documentaries about Jonestown or NXIVM or Heaven's Gate and locate the story somewhere very far from your own life. Strange people, unusual beliefs, a charismatic madman. But the mechanisms are not strange. Love bombing, isolation, sunk cost, doubt reframed as weakness, a leader whose behavior is exempt from the rules they set for everyone else. Those are not features of fringe groups. They are features of any system that prioritizes its own survival over the well-being of the people inside it. The difference between a cult and a lot of other things is usually a matter of how far those mechanisms are pushed and whether anyone is watching from the outside. What gets people out is rarely a sudden revelation. It is usually contact, a conversation with someone outside the group who doesn't treat them as lost, a crack in the isolation, a letter, a visit, a phone call that gets through. Exit counselors who work with former members say the single most effective thing an outside person can do is stay in contact without ultimatums. Not it's me or them, just I'm still here. The group works by becoming the whole world. The way out is remembering there is one. Nobody joins a cult. They join something that felt at the beginning like the thing they had been looking for. The mechanisms that keep them there are the same ones that make any group feel like home. The difference is what happens when you try to leave.